Welcome back to what is now, I believe, the 8th video in this series. If you are just tuning in now, you can hit a link up here. We'll take you to the first video in the series. You can hit that subscribe button and that little bell next to it, give you a notification when a new video comes out. I hope that most of you have by this point. Today we're going to be removing the engine and basically doing all the prep work that leads up to the removal of the engine. I just want to go over a couple of things before we get started with this. Number one, it's round on the bottom. I can't say that it's an absolute necessity that you can't remove an engine without an engine stand, and you could build one out of wood, you could do whatever, but if you want to do any meaningful work, you need an engine stand, and here's one that I have, and we're going to drop the engine onto this when we remove it. So I'm going to say that this is something you need. I still have hoses that I need to disconnect from the oil pump that need to be accounted for. It does go to a radiator and a thermostat up front, a couple of other connectors. I just want to get everything out of the way. The shift rod back here. So we're just going to go through one at a time, make sure everything's good before we remove the bolts to remove the engine. I'll just put tape on the hose and label it with a number. The hose has been bent a certain way for so long that it just fits nice. That's just my thing. So now I could just remove it and I'll know exactly where it goes when I put it back on. Tighten these down. I won't lose them, they'll stay on the hose. A hose like this that goes from the thermostat all the way back to the oil tank, I could just put a piece of tape on so I know which one's going where, and then pull it all the way through and under the motorcycle so it's out of the way. I've labeled this one too. I should probably mention you want to put something down under that oil cooler hose that you remove, or this will happen. I'm going to pull back the ignition. Keep this out of the way. I'll probably cable tie it up so it's not hanging loose. I'm going to disconnect my low oil pressure light. There's a 3/8 nut right here that holds this on. Return that nut so it doesn't get lost. Make sure to swing this cable out of the way. I've marked this hose as 3. I will now loosen the clamp and remove it. That hose is easily pulled through the frame right here. It'll later be pulled from under the engine. Tiny hose right here exists for the breather to point it downwards to the ground. With that, all of the oil connections are removed from the oil pump. I drop a cable tie around the ignition connections, and with that, now all of the connections on this side of the engine are now shored up or removed. I'm going to remove this linkage again, swing it out of the way. I have to connect it and disconnect it on an as-need basis. I'm going to loosen the voltage regulator now. It is 7/16. We can see this wire here that I'm wiggling travels up from the voltage regulator. I continue to follow it up. It makes its way up here and to this relay. I'm going to disconnect that cable right now. Put the nut right back on. I'm going to have to cut this cable tie and put a new one on. I'm not cutting the end of the cable tie. That shows that this is a modification. I know that the cable's going to go back through a cable tie right here and stick out like a sore thumb. Now I can start pulling this cable back. I'm going to take this long cable that has just been removed, and I'm just going to cable tie it up so it's out of the way. Pull the remaining 2-prong connector for the regulator from the housing right here, and this should disconnect the voltage regulator fully. This can now be put off to the side, put the voltage regulator bolts back in, and with that, all connections on this side of the engine are now removed. There's nothing left holding this engine in except for the engine mounts on the front and rear. I have my vacuum pump right here, and what I'm going to need to do is I want to make sure that there's no oil sitting there on the bottom of the case. So I'm going to stick my vacuum hose down into the case and pump out any residual oil. quite a bit of oil captured. Any residual oil will be addressed when the cam cover is removed later. All of the work so far has led to this moment. Mine appears to be 8 mil up top hex, and the bottom is 9/16. So I'm going to stage that right now. I'm just going to be breaking tension. That's one. I'm actually doing the ratcheting from the bottom on the nut because more room to work on the bottom. That's enough for this one. Now I'll be focusing my attention on the rear mounts. The rear is going to require a spanner in here. I'm not going to be able to fit the ratchet. There we go. I now have a short one in place now. I was able to break tension on the rear one. There's one. That's sufficient. This side is the same story. I could get a ratchet on the top, but I will need the spanner on the bottom. Ha! This one, look at that. This one was loose. No surprise. At this point, I could actually take them out now because the tension has been removed from all of them. So I'm doing that at this time. They're not coming out without a fight. I'm going to choke up on this. Okay, I don't know what to make of this. Let's get the bolt out. And it's not coming out easy. It's like I gotta push and twist to get it up, but it's not an emergency either. It's coming. There it is. Wow. We'll have to have a look at that. See what's going on here. So right here, where the threads are eaten up, this is the portion just as it goes into the engine mount on the bike itself. I wonder if because this bolt was loose, it vibrated and rattled and actually wore that bolt down. Take a look at the condition of this bolt, and I don't even think it's straight anymore. This thing is destroyed. But I will point out, and you can see also, yeah, it looks like the thread work over here where the actual nut is, we could see right here that that's chewed up too. Look at that, and that's probably what was eaten up on the nut. I've cleaned it up, but this thread is just destroyed. It might have been caused by vibration. We're gonna keep this in mind. We're gonna do the other ones. We're gonna inspect the other ones as they come out. It'll tell the story. This one looks a whole lot healthier. Let's push this one up. Has a little bit of oil on it. This one you could also see some mild wear over here from vibration, but not nearly as damaged as the other one. And there's no apparent thread damage. I mean, it's not like brand new. Continuing on the back of the high side. Deformed in the same spot, and this one was tight. Same spot. So it wasn't because that other one was slightly loose. It's just it has the propensity to wear out right there. I'm sure if I put them side by side, we would see that. I'll probably do that later. Our final mounting bolt will be drawn out. Again, wear point is the same. A little rusty. Really quick test, just a little nudge, just like this. Engine is unseated from the chassis. It's just gravity holding it in. I need to make room, prepare everything. I need to get the engine stand ready to be able to lift it up and place it in. There's no shame in asking for a little assistance to take the engine out and place it on the stand. It's a lot better than hurting your back or breaking the engine, or both. Seats right on. I'll point out that on my stand, you had to be sure to wrap around to clear this hose fitting right here as you lowered the engine. Not a big deal, but just something that you had to be aware of because this piece is quite wide. Before I screw the engine into the stand, I want to show the side-by-side comparisons of the engine mount bolts. While it's already readily apparent that these are the wrong bolts, the jury is still out on what kind of problems this could have caused. As all of these bolts are worn down, it's possible that the engine could have deflected slightly, even a fraction of a degree, cause problems on the primary and possibly the transmission. Hopefully everything can be realigned once everything's assembled. I'm going to be ordering this shown here, the correct lower engine mount bolts. And this is going to be my next step as a matter of safety, simply so it doesn't fall off the stand. Tighten these down. And I'm just going to snug them. There's no need to go crazy. Gonna hit this area with some degreaser, get the bowl rolling. Wow, I can't imagine how many years of crap built up on this. Hit this too. The engine is now on the bench and will continue to be here until such a time as I deliver it to the machinist. First thing I want to do is I want to pull out the stator. It had a little crack in it last time. It was still good though, so I left it in. I don't think I want to leave it in this time. Don't want to press my luck. This is a little hard to pull out. Mine's not frozen. You can use a puller if you want to. It's a 3-screw puller. And there it is, it came off. You can see the puller would fit right over here to pull this out. As long as it's not stuck and you're just working against the magnets, it's absolutely fine. And take a look at mine. I don't see any problems. There's no oil getting in. I'll just clean this up. No worries at all. I'll get close because I know there was a little crack forming. We could see right over here, this crack, just like I remember. Can't tell if it got worse or not. Doesn't matter. This is going to be replaced, right? There's no argument. I got lucky getting this far with this. So I just wanted to point that out. So we're going to start the removal process, but we have to remove back here. There are 2 Phillips screws. We're going to do that now. I can already see a horror show back here. This can't be good. Look at that. Oh boy. Let me get this out of here. Let's take a look. I think these wires cracked or overheated or whatnot at some point. Then the oxidizing set in and just destroyed everything. I don't know. Let's see. What do we got here? So it looks like where it's seated right now, it's like just barely well enough to run. The insulation material is still pressed against the metal case, so it hasn't shorted yet, but there's just about nothing left. It's like this thing was ready to go. I could see more green behind here. We're going to see the full damage of this when I take this off. This is, look at this. Look at this, completely rotten through. This is really bad. Stator's held on by 4 screws, and these screws have these plates here that evenly distribute the pressure. So I'm just going to loosen them now. I'm going to need to push this socket through like that to release it. Now it's removed. Now we can see the damage. Yeah, wow. How do you like that? So all of this, the cable is completely oxidized. There's very little cable left. So it's probably heating up under load because a lot of the wire has already deteriorated, but there was just enough insulation that it wasn't shorting. Yeah, this is a bad scene right here. It's a good thing that this is coming out now. Thanks to Home Chef, I never run out of places to store things. Stored with these items will also be this O-ring right here. This is for the inner primary. It's not of extreme significant importance for me as long as it's not broken because I don't have a chain. I got a belt, but still I'll check it out, and if it's damaged I'll replace it. Yeah, I can guess these items could be stored as charging system. Just put away in more boxes. Even if the item is broken, until it's replaced, it is stored. As I'm cleaning down here, I found this. Well, this gives me shivers. It could be from a previous build. It could be from like 40 years ago. We're going to find out when we open up this engine. We're going to open up the cover here for the ignition. One of them is hex or Torx, as it were. The other one stripped out a long time ago, and I've cut a flathead into it. Just one of my bike's idiosyncrasies that I've never bothered to change because it's just kind of always been that way. So I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people have stuff like this on their bikes. One day I'll get the correct screw, but not today. I want to scribe in where my latest timing marks meet so that I will have a ballpark range when I set the engine back up. With that, I'll now remove these two screws. That should dislodge the module. So right here, just a trace amount of oil. So I'm going to remove this cable tie here and temporarily remove this fitting for this Deutsch connector. Carefully walking this out. I need to stagger the remaining cables and connectors in order to get it out, so I don't want all the connectors to come through the hole at once. The first ones proved to be the most difficult as there's the least room. They should be done delicately. It gets easier as each one's removed. There's more room in this hole. And then I progressively move on to the thicker connectors. This one I ended up removing the heat shrink. I had 2 coats of heat shrink on there and made the cable a lot thicker. With the heat shrink removed, came out with no problem. I've now removed the ignition from the bike. Reconnect this Deutsch connector so I don't lose it. Recable tie this back together. I'm going to remove the rotor bolt here, 9/16. Got to hold the engine stationary. There we go. Notice I'm holding the engine secure up here. Be very gentle with this one. Look how thin this one is. And this should come out. This keyed. It only goes in one way. See a little notch in there? If we look in here, we can see the notch where that fits in. We could also see that a small amount of oil is starting to leak out of this seal, right? This is apparent that this is where it's weeping out of. It's collecting here on the bottom. So this seal is giving out. And this will constitute what I will call ignition system. I'll now pack this up and more free storage provided by Home Chef. Next thing I want to do before I pull the cam cover off is pull out the hydraulic lifters. They are actually fit to their own place within the lifter blocks, or at least I seem to think so, most people do. So I don't want to just pull them out and stick them anywhere. So this is what I've done. I have a container that I will put them in. They're already marked for their position, so I'll pull them out of the engine and pop them into this box so they will retain their location. Start with the rear exhaust, rear intake, front intake, and finally front exhaust. I might as well pop out these O-rings that are still in here just so I don't forget them. I'm already here. I'm going to replace them anyway, but I'm going to store the old parts until the new ones get put in, as I always do. So now the O-rings are removed. Okay, I'm now going to begin loosening bolts on the cam cover. See the layout for the bolts of the cam cover, all different sizes. I have it flipped over a facsimile of what was up top. I'm just going to push them into cardboard. Ta-da! I want to see how long this thing's going to sit here and drain on my bench. before I try and open this thing up and have like a quart of oil end up on my bench here. I've reintroduced those inner screws that are used to hold down the ignition timing, and I've used some of my own screws to modify my puller. I wanted to show the screws and some of the washers I put on before I put the puller on so you could see them clearly. Not only do these screws protect the actual cam cover itself, but it also brings out these screws a little bit further. I'm going to put my puller on now, and this will be able to cleanly apply even pressure to pull the cam cover out away from the end of the cam right here. That's working just perfect. Sliding right out of the seal, right off the cam. There we go. No problem at all. What I want to do is align all of the markings. For those who can't see, we could see the dash line up here and here, and we can see the dash line up here and here. One of the questions I was asked to verify, is everything in alignment? Did anything jump a sprocket? Of course, we could see as I bring it into alignment, we can see that everything is just fine. I believe that this bearing here is ready for replacement, so I will have that one pushed out and replaced as well. This means I'll have to send in this cover with the cam as well as the engine for replacement. Pull the cam, it shows just extremely light wear on the surfaces. I don't see anything that worries me about this other than it needs new bushings, bearings, and whatnot in the engine. Probably shore that up. So I'm going to say the cam's okay. I have no concerns. Way in back of the cam chest here, behind the rollers, we could see a spacer, a couple spacers, actually a couple of items here that I need to pull out. We can see this metal spacer right here, and this right here, and this is as they were. And now I'm going to pull out this breather gear here, which, by the way, was another inspection issue. Slowly pull it out. And what I want to check for here is any obstruction in here, and I wouldn't think there was. But we're looking here through the mesh from the inside out, and I can tell you now that there is no obstruction in here. See no problems with the teeth. Everything about this seems okay. I'm going to put a little bit of oil on this and slap it right back in. We can see how at the right time this ventilation opens back here and then closes. That's what it does. To remove the oil pump, I'm going to start by removing a circlip that is way back here. You can see I'm pointing a screwdriver to it, and I'm going to use my fancy pants circlip removal tool. And allow that shaft to come through that gear here. This gear will just kind of fall out once I remove the oil pump. For the oil pump, we're looking at 7/16 all around. Gonna have to use a spanner here for the top two, as there's no clearance for the ratchet. Just gonna loosen, take the torque off of them first. Gonna let that drain off for a bit. Gasket held up very nicely, but it's time to go. One gear here is just kind of free floating. It's sitting on a shaft inside the oil pump, and the other one, this is it right here, and the other one sits on the shaft that rides all the way through the engine to the one that we just disconnected from that circlip. Remove this gear. I slide the shaft back. We could see the gear in here just kind of falls freely now, but there is one thing I was looking for. This is the same piece that I found earlier on the bottom of the pan on the engine. We could see that this one was securely in place. That was just one that just happened to be there and had nothing to do with anything. This is what I was specifically going after. Everything's just fine. It wasn't like one laying around or missing. Slide this and out of the engine. I popped that gear back in. I just didn't want it to fall out while I was removing anything. Peel off the inner gasket. And that's it. Oil pump is removed from this engine. I really should remove my oil pressure gauge right quick though. I'm going to do that now. Here's a witch's hat. I don't see any matter stuck in here. Something to look for. This will be stored in the category of oil pump. For transport, the cam will be reinserted, the cam cover put back on. I'm going to jump back to do this quickly only because I should. I've dropped the cam back in, aligned everything up really nice. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the lifter blocks here. In doing so, I've actually put the lifters back in for reasons which I'll explain. Removing them is absolutely no problem. You could just loosen them up and take them right out. It's putting them back in that has to be done with an aligning tool. So I'm going to loosen them now. Now, once I break the seal, right, which, there you go, seal's broken, I can gently squeeze these together. And if I gently squeeze them together and lift them up, then the rollers here, they won't fall out. They're sort of like binded into place. So there's a safe way to remove them. And that's why I put the lifters back in. Should not forget to remove the gasket that is under here. Put the hydraulic lifters back in their respective location that I annotated. Aligning this back, I could drop the rollers out. Here we have the exhaust falling. Intake. This block can be cleaned up. I have some surface rust and what have you. These passages can be cleaned. I'm going to do the same exact thing with this side. The only difference is there is interference on this top bolt and nut. So I have to loosen this and push the bolt through so that I could get this top piece off. I should not forget to return the washer and nut for the case. I'm going to put the cam cover back on for transport and apply a little bit of oil here to the bearing surfaces and here as well. Keys here set the cover into position. That's it. This motor is stripped down, ready to go to the machine shop. With that, I conclude this video. Stay tuned for more videos in this series, a lot more videos in this series. Hit that subscribe button and that little bell because subscribe is absolutely useless. I hope you enjoyed this video. When the next video comes out, I'll put a little thing up here to click on. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Would you like to reply?